So, Darren, we finally meet.
Hello there everyone, today's tactics video is a special battle between myself as Syracuse versus James Given from the Creative Aseembly as the Lucatani. James, or Dogbert as he is known, is a community coordinator at Creative Aseembly, and this battle took place during one of their live streams over on the Twitch at Total War Official the other day. Craig Laycock, the lead community manager, was also there taking turns at playing and just making jokes a bit too rude for this channel. If you want to skip straight to the start of the battle, click on the box on screen now. However, you will be missing some key information about our army setups, our strengths and weaknesses, and information about the terrain. The battle takes place at Malva. However, it's not the same Malva map as I've shown in my last video, but one I showed a long time ago, and this time facing a different direction. I forgot to switch direction to be the map I knew more about, but it actually turned out to be really well balanced, and just as interesting. This particular area of Malva itself is essentially 2 wide central lanes, 2 thin outer lanes, cut up by 3 vertical hills. Because the hills have trees and the valleys are open plains, Malva always delivers the best multiplayer battles in my opinion. Skilled players can make use of the hills and trees for line of sight and defensive advantages, and the valleys for quick flanking routes. The rules of the battle were pretty simple. I went with the same ones I usually go with, as I wasn't really prepared to play this battle and they usually make for interesting videos. No more than 4 of the same unit, no artillery, a max of 6 cavalry and a max of 2 missile cavalry.
You never said anything about flaming fireballs. Oh, no.
Go on.
No.
It wasn't in the rules.
You know what? It's not in the rules, but I am aware that this would hurt his feelings greatly, you know? And that would upset me as well.
You're a nice boy.
I'm a nice man.
The funds were set to Ultra and I ended up choosing Syracuse. I had chosen Athens, but their lack of good melee cavalry made me default to Syracuse, as I played as them the other day in my last tactics video and I felt they were a very well-rounded faction. We were live on Twitch at the time, so I didn't want to mess around too much choosing armies. I chose a pretty similar army to my last tactics video, with 1 unit of Hippeus Lancers, who is also my general. The Lancers are a powerful shock cavalry unit, more upper to mid tier, and they are the only one available to Syracuse. Next is 2 units of Citizen Cavalry, which are pretty weak melee cavalry. However, I upgraded them 4 times to have a silver chevron each, giving them pretty significant buffs to their melee attack, defense and morale. Next we have 2 units of Mercenary Companion Cavalry, which are a very high tier melee cavalry. I said before that they are for me in the top 3 cavalry units in the game. They are also limited to 2 per army by the game, probably because they provide a morale boost to nearby allies. Next I have 3 units of Archers, which are a pretty weak unit but have pretty high range and provide decent missile damage. Next up is 3 units of Mercenary Samnite Warriors, which are limited to 3 per army. Again, I'm not really too sure why. Someone mentioned that all mercenary units are now limited, and it may be for historical reasons, but I feel in multiplayer it's kind of unfair if you play with large armies. Their limit doesn't double, so it throws the balance of armies off quite a bit. Syracuse have great cavalry in a 20 unit army, but in a 40 unit army they don't, compared to factions like Bactria that have unlimited high tier cavalry. I think ticking large armies should double the unit limits, at least for those that don't affect morale. Let me know what you think. Oh, and the Samnites are a very strong sword infantry unit. Next we have 3 units of picked hoplites, the very best spear infantry Syracuse has to offer, and they're one of the best in the game also. I plan to have them as my primary defense, the anchor to my army which all other units would revolve around essentially. Next we have 3 units of thorax swordsmen, who keeping in with tradition have made an appearance in every tactics video so far. They, in my opinion, are just the best unit in the game. Their cost is relatively low, they have good defense, good attack, can fire missiles and are fast and maneuverable. They are one of the most flexible units in the game, good for all situations. Lastly, I went with 3 units of Thurio spears, mainly because I felt the Lucatani could be a cavalry heavy army and I might need more spears than usual. The Thurio spears are a mid-tier spear infantry, and the reason I chose them over the hoplites or thorax spears is because the Thurios have a better charge bonus and I felt they wouldn't be used as defensive units. That's what the picked hoplites are for. So that's it for my army. I played as Syracuse only once before and chose a fairly similar army, except with 3 Thurio spears I went with peltasts and shock cavalry. Choosing high tier units in most categories is always a good way to give yourself the best chance at winning. Doubling down on one category, be it cavalry, swords, spears or missiles, is never a good idea. You need a good plan of what you want to accomplish and the diversity to make up for when that plan goes wrong. James has chosen the Lucatani, as voted by the stream, and I don't think he had ever really played as the Lucatani before. I for one never really tried them, but from speaking with Legend of Total War, I was aware they were an all-round average faction with no real troops of quality. From examining their roster, this does seem to be the case, with only one unit costing above 700 gold. From what I can tell, there is pretty much no reason you would choose an Iberian faction over another barbarian faction like the Arverni. Even the Aravasi have better units. This could be why the stream wanted it, as James is known for being a good player, so the Lucatani could be my handicap. Nevertheless, James chose 5 Lucatani nobles, one of which being his general, slightly breaking the rules there, but we'll let him off, he's a good lad. The nobles are a very strong high-tier sword infantry unit. They have the encourage ability that allows them to buff the morale of nearby units, and the headhunt ability, momentarily increasing their attack and morale at the expense of defense. Next, James chose 2 units of Iberian cavalry, which are the weakest form of cavalry for the Lucatani. They are actually a pretty good mid-tier cavalry unit that are quite fast. Something I've noticed in the game is that there is no speed stat, but from my tests, it seems that armor is the main contributing factor with this. The more armor, the slower the cav unit. They also have the frenzy charge, which increases charge speed, charge damage and acceleration, but causes extra fatigue once the ability has run its course. We then have 4 more units of cavalry, the Scutarii, which are the best form of melee cav available to the Lucatani. They are what I would call a good flexible cavalry unit, not being too weak or powerful in any one category, and because they are spear cavalry they have a decent bonus versus other cavalry, so are ideal for cavalry engagements, especially when using that frenzied charge. Next we have 2 Lucatani guerrillas, which are a special unit that can deploy outside of the regular deployment zone. They are spear infantry and are ideal for ambushing unsuspecting cavalry as they have the stalk attribute, meaning they can remain hidden in any kind of terrain. As a spear infantry unit by itself, they are quite poor, but have a fairly high defense. Next we have 3 Lucatani spearmen. These are a solid mid-tier spear infantry unit that are great for defense. They have a shield screen ability that stops them from moving but makes them almost impenetrable to any charges. They also have the counter cavalry tactics, which allows them to chew up cavalry twice as fast as normal by delivering a large bonus versus mounted units with no penalty afterward. Lastly, we have 4 units of veteran shield warriors, which are an upper mid-tier sword unit. They have good damage and defense and a great charge bonus and great morale. They are comparable to my thorax swordsman, except better in every category apart from armor. James has also upgraded 3 of them twice and the last one once for better attack, defense and morale. So reflecting on both armies, my Syracusean army is definitely more diverse and has higher tier units overall, but James has decided to go with no skirmishers, meaning that he will want to close the gap fast and use his superior infantry numbers to flank me. All his units have very good defense, so holding me in place to get those flanks should be possible, and his 6 melee cavalry to my 4 melee and 1 shot cavalry mean that if he plays it right he could take them down, especially if the guerrillas get the jump on me. As for my army, I just need to hold James in place long enough to get my cavalry charges on his rear and try to pin some units with missile fire. Remember, this was live on Twitch at the time, so there was a bit of pressure on my end anyway, as I'd never played live to an audience before of any kind, and also for those wondering, my internet is quite terrible where I live, so I wasn't watching the stream while playing. We both had no idea of each other's armies or the layout of the map. Anyways, let's start the battle.
You know what? Darren Toll can make me famous with his YouTube videos.
That's true.
Darren, make me famous!
Remember, you can check out the tactical overview in the bottom corner so that you always stay grounded in what's going on in the battle. This also determines north, south, east and west. We both deployed fairly lengthy lines spanning across both hills in the centre. I put my cavalry on the wings with my hoplites in the centre and on even ground, backed up by my missile units, and flanked with spears, and then further out had my samnites on the east and thorax on the west. My companion cav were on the east and citizen cav were on the west, so I was a little bit worried on that side as it was much weaker. James set out all his infantry in a double line with his guerrilla units far forward to the centre of the map, with each one hidden in a hill on the far east and far west unknown to me. He posted his cavalry on the flanks with 2 Scutarii and 1 Iberian together on each side. James moved everyone up straight away, and I moved everyone up also to try and gain some of the hills and also just get the ball rolling early on. I also wanted to put my companion cavalry in the trees in just the first few seconds, hoping he wouldn't notice their quality. On the west, James's cavalry came into my view and I knew they outmatched my citizen cavalry, so I pulled them back into a more defensive role and brought my general to that side for more support. I also had 1 unit of Thurios hoplites on that side, so it would be tough to push back his cavalry. I continued to move up though, and James halted his main body but moved his eastern cavalry up. James began moving more aggressively now with his cavalry on the east, and I realised they were coming in for an attack. Realising they were spear cavalry mostly, I didn't want to get caught so far away from my spear infantry, so I pulled my units down off the hill, which is kind of a big risk charging downhill, because it's really effective. I spread the unit wide to make sure the tail didn't get caught, but James' cavalry was faster and he activated Frenzied Charge, which gave him that extra speed. Ultimately, the unit did get caught, but the charge was heavily weakened, and I ordered my spears out to help the fight there. Seeing the threat of my spears, James quickly ordered his cavalry back up the hill, but fatigue began to set in, and I picked off a good few of them while they ran up the hill. Meanwhile, his guerrillas came into view also, and I think if James had let me come to him, I definitely would have crashed into them because I completely forgot about units that could deploy outside the deployment zone. James then shifted his entire army over toward the east, probably to close to his retreating cavalry, which worked out great for me because my citizen cavalry were in the clear essentially. Had he rushed my centre and pushed my west side with his cavalry, he most certainly would have got around me. Realising my companion cavalry were chasing James uphill, I turned them back and put them into a more defensive position along with the spears and started turning my line to keep up with his movement. Something I thought was interesting and I'll definitely explore more in future is keeping your force tight and moving them as a whole together. For more spear dependent factions like mine, it takes a long time to turn lines, and I was worried my entire left side will be late to facing him. James was now really pushing up with a group of nobles, and I was really struggling to get my line in order and up on the hill at the same time.
Why is there so much hate in the world? Riders, advance!
My Thurio spears were late to form back up and the attack orders were given. James crashed some nobles into them and my Samnites all moved in on other units along the hill. While my line caught up, James had a decent position on the hill but not a perfect one. The hill was only slightly raised in the areas he positioned, so it wouldn't really affect my troops too badly. One mistake on his part was just leaving a spear unit in the woods. I effectively just ignored them and ran everyone past them, as I knew they weren't going to be any threat to my cavalry because they were faster and they'd be pretty much useless on their own against any of my other units. As the attacks raged on, I sent my cavalry around the curved valley of the north to the east, and my companion cavalry out to a wide area to run around and flank. I also gave the attack orders for my picked hoplites, and my thorax were now forming up on the side of the hill also. Meanwhile, James broke a unit of Iberian cavalry through my southern part of the line and sent them into the backs of my Samnites, which was a pretty good charge. Around the same time, our cavalry were facing off in the east valley, though I decided to smash the guerrillas pinned against my Thurio spears to free them up and stretched my other unit wide to take on the two units of cavalry. They were companion cavalry, so I felt they could deal with it by themselves for a while. Up north, my cavalry were just finishing looping around, and I left my thorax on the edge of the hill to fight James's pursuing guerrillas. James's cavalry that was tied up in my lines began routing, and one of my Thurio spears units began wavering. I think I actually killed a good few of them with my own arrow fire when they were trying to hit the Scutarii on the south. My secondary unit of companion cavalry were free now that his spearmen broke, and I sent them to the aid of my wavering spears and used a free spear unit to help the cavalry fight that was taking place on the plains. I wanted to hold his cavalry there for my northern cav to come in and support them. Now almost all of our units were engaged on the hill, and I sent my general south and the 2 units of citizen cavalry into the lines to break some units. James put his Iberian cavalry against one of them though, slowing the charge, and when they were engaged he sent 2 Lucatani spearmen out to get the ones trapped on the hillside. Meanwhile, my general crashed perfectly into the cavalry fight, used war cry to lower the morale of one of the units, and just after, James used his rally and raised banner, which affected about 80% of his units, raising their morale and defense for a while. He also brought some Iberian cavalry against my general, but I pulled him out of there since he is shock cavalry and let my spears do the damage. Meanwhile, my citizen cavalry got absolutely torn apart by the Lucatani spearmen on the hill. At this point, James had 2 units of nobles that broke through my lines in the south and sent one of them into my archers and his general into the rear of some Samnites. He then activated Headhunt on all nobles to increase his damage, and the fight raged on. I concentrated all my arrow fire on his general, and up north, the 2 units of Thorax swordsmen had broken the guerrilla unit from earlier before and were now free to start charging into the rear of James's lines. At the same time, my general was now free from the cavalry fight, and I charged him uphill into James's general, hoping just to knock him out if I could. It proved to be a bit of a mistake. I used a war cry again and intimidate to stop his general using abilities and lower his morale, but my general unit took huge casualties, and he actually ended up dying while he was retreating from that charge because James attacked into it. I gathered more Thorax and sent them into the back of more lines, and a newly free unit of picked hoplites and manoeuvred it along the lines to do the same. I then did a final charge into his general when I saw that my general was dead, and the charge killed James's general.
Advance at speed! Charge! Engage!
At that point, James wrote GG to me in chat, and it was looking like I had won for definite. With his general dead, a lot more troops began to break, and James's line began to fold from north to south.
Riders advance! No! Advance! Pull back!
So that was it. It was counted as a close victory, but I'll let you guys decide if it was or not. I did have the better army overall, but I think if James kept his central ground, he could have won the cavalry fight on the left, and if he let me come toward him, he possibly could have got the jump on my companion cavalry with his spearmen, giving him a great edge. Once he shifted his line across the hill, in my opinion, he ruled out any advantages he had and put the final nail in his own coffin. It was a great experience though to play live on Twitch, and after his heckling on Twitter, it felt that much better to hand it to Team CA. Also, you may have noticed the CA banners in the video. They were done upon my request by Knife the Bottom Lows, who has many faction emblem reworks on the Steam Workshop. So that's it for the battle. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been talking with James a bit now, and we'll probably have another fight in the future with a faction of his own choosing, so I look forward to that. That's all from me, and I'll see you in the next one.
This is the problem here. This is what I didn't want. Ooh. Even though I've got a lot of infantry, I'm not making the best use of it, which is a problem. I didn't really want to engage at all with any of these units, but over on this wing, this is the problem. Ooh, getting a bit loud. I got through over here, but they haven't really done too much damage. Problem is, I haven't got any oomph behind any of my units. I lost it after the first engagement, and because of the map, if I had an open field, I could use my numbers, and I don't think the barbarian units have quite as much power, because the fights take a lot longer in the patch. I blame Craig for his debuff aura, which brings me down.
Douglas cut the end.
guys, don't go anywhere, and we'll see you next week. And Darren, I will get you.
We're coming for you.
We're coming for you, Darren.
We'll find you. And we will kill you.
Sweet.
Closed it.
Do you...
Sweetie! You're right there, sweetie.
I didn't mean to put the Y in there, it just kind of happened. Just putting that out there. Don't generally call Darren sweetie.
Oh, that's brilliant.